terrorism, domestic.
National terrorism, domestic. National domestic terrorism, national
terrorism, national domestic. National question.
Terrorism, domestic terrorism, national terrorism, domestic terrorism, domestic national terrorism, national
terrorism, national terrorism, domestic terrorism,
terrorism, national
terrorism, domestic national terrorism,
domestic
terrorism.
Question.
Call yesterday.
Domestic
question, domestic terrorism question.
Domestic terrorism, terrorism.
Question.
Domestic question, terrorism.
Domestic
Question. Terrorism.
Question. Terrorism.
Question.
Domestic.
Question. Terrorism.
Question.
Domestic terrorism, domestic national domestic terrorism, national domestic question, terrorism, domestic terrorism, national domestic terrorism,
domestic terrorism,
question.
National
Question.
terrorism.
Question.
National terrorism.
Question.
National domestic terrorism. Question. Domestic question.
National
question, terrorism, national
domestic terrorism,
Domestic
question,
Terrorism, national terrorism, domestic national terrorism.
question,
domestic terrorism,
domestic
domestic
question.
Question.
domestic terrorism.
Question.